Security and Medicare. That's the number you slice in half, and you try to keep your must-haves to that point. Now, the first time I did this for our family, our must-haves were 65%. I've talked to people that were 85 and 90%. So this is not an easy budget. This is not a simple budget, even though it sounds simple. This is something that takes a while to achieve. But once you've achieved it, you've got some balance in your life. 30% is for the fun stuff. It's for vacations and clothes and dining out and whatever, entertainment, all that stuff. That goes into 30%, which leaves 20% of your money to pay for the past and to pay for the future. Okay? The past is paying off your debt. The future is saving for retirement. This is an achievable budget for most people. Most people can do this. Now, I live in Los Angeles, which is a really expensive place to live. And I constantly hear from young people that are in, New York or some other very expensive place saying, this is ridiculous. This is not realistic. And it's like, yeah, I know. You're probably paying 40%, 50% of your income just on rent. There is no way to do this budget. And they're like, yeah, so what do I do? Make more money or move. It sounds flip, but you can't make 6 and 4 and 2 equal 10. You can't balance a budget if you're spending too much on the basics. Something has to give. What usually gives is retirement and paying off your debt. Because we have to have some fun. We're only on this planet for a very short time. We have to live our lives today. So if you are, spending most of your money on the must-haves, it's the future that's going to pay. Talk about that. Oh, this is interesting. I had an argument with my editor of my book who thought internet access was a must-have. I happen to agree with her, but it's like we didn't live without the internet. So wherever you want to put it is up to you. But a lot of families that have smartphones are spending $200 or $300 a month on those phones. So that's something to look at. You really need that much expense in your life if you're trying to cut costs. And the savings part is, the debt repayment would be any payment above the minimum payments for those credit cards or those loans that go into the must-haves. Okay, why would you do this to yourself? As I said, it gives you balance. It gives you some flexibility. If you lose your job, you only need to pay expenses that equal half of your old salary. If you're a 2-income family, that's a lot more doable. Even if you're a 1-income family, you can get by for a little bit longer if your nut is smaller. So that's one reason to do it. Another is that you instantly know what you can afford and what you can't. Okay? You don't have to call into a TV show. You can just find out. If you can fit that loan payment in under the 50%, then maybe it's a go. Okay? If you can't, then you probably can't afford it right now. All right. Another one of my little rants has to do with retirement. And I see so much bad advice out there in the blogosphere, in media, giving you that. I mean, you always hear about the retirement crisis and we're not saving enough. And then on the other hand, there are people giving you advice that are telling you there's something more important to do than save for your own retirement. And the reality is there isn't. Retirement is expensive, probably lasts longer than you think, and it's coming faster than you think. So the number one priority for most people has got to be putting that money away. Now, if you've heard this little thing before, don't answer, but if you haven't heard it, play along. If I gave you a penny every day and I promised to double it, do you have any idea how much money that would be worth at the end of the month? A lot? Okay. $10 million. All right? I used to have a chart that proved it, but you can go into Excel and figure it out. What happens is that little bit of money just stays a little bit of money, and then it gets a little bit better, and then a little more, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're talking real money. That's what happens with retirement accounts. A little bit here, a little bit there, tiny little things, and you're looking at, why am I bothering? This is going nowhere. And then you have a year like 2009 where you're ready to cut your throat. It's like, why did I do this? Where's my money going?
Or 2000.
Or 2000, or any other number, And what we forget is that 30 years ago, the Dow was under 1,000. Now it's over 10,000, you know? We do this, we see the dips, but we don't see the bigger picture over time. And the reality is you keep putting little bits away over time. Eventually it will. Now they won't double every day, and it won't double every year, it won't double every 5 years, but eventually you start making some money. Now the problem is, if you start late, you're cutting yourself off. You're going to be going here rather than here. And if you know anyone in your 20s, if you are in your 20s, now is the time to save. There is no more important thing than to put that money aside. Because I started to save for retirement a little bit late. I was 25. I have the freedom now that I never could have imagined. You know, I can take time off from work if I want to. I can have sabbaticals. I have so much more freedom because I'm not behind. So any of you older folks that are behind, talk to those younger folks. Talk about how important it is to get that early start and to keep going. The other myth I really want to tackle is the idea that you'll never retire. Now, some people say this to me with a smile on their face. They love what they're doing, and they never want to retire. Most people don't have a smile on their face when they tell me this. The reality is you will retire. I mean, most of us do not drop dead at our desk. Usually, often, something pushes us out. A layoff, we get sick, we get disabled, a loved one gets sick, a loved one gets disabled. About 40% of the people who retire before age 65 did so involuntarily, or not when they expected. I mean, caring for a loved one is a voluntary act, but still, it was like, you know, let them suffer in a nursing home or work, I will take care of them. So you got to keep in mind, you may not have the option of never retiring. It may come sooner than you think. So that's why I want to keep the plan B in mind. And even if you love what you do and you can't imagine not doing it, give your future self a break, because he might not feel the same way. You're all enthusiastic, you know, and the 65-year-old you is going, I would like to retire now, and if I hadn't been such an idiot 40 years ago, maybe I could have. So keep that in mind. You know what you feel now. You know how you feel about work, life, whatever. Things change. And how much things change between 20 and 30, and how much they change between 30 and 40 and 50. One of the great things for my business is that people turn 40. Because when people turn 40, they realize how fast 20 years goes. And then they project themselves 20 years ahead and go, holy crap, I better get started. I better start learning about this stuff. Those were the disability statistics and the folks that had to bail out. Okay, if you can, if it's not too late, start saving for retirement early. If it's not, get started anyway. Anything you save now is going to help you down the road. Don't cash out. Something like half of the people in their 20s, every time they leave a job, they cash the check, the 401k check. Don't do that. I have one friend, dear, dear woman, 52. She has $16,000 in a retirement account. She is overweight, has diabetes. She's not going to make it to 65 working in the job that she does. She's going to have to go out earlier. And I had to tell her, look, honey, it's Social Security, you know? Let's go look at your benefits. Let's see what you can expect. And it's going to be a big drop in their lifestyle to just live on Social Security. That motivated her, I think. Then she signed up for a 401k. She's contributing the 6%. She's getting the match. You know, if she were to get where she's supposed to be, probably half her income should be going into that 401k and other retirement plans. She's not going to be able to do that. But anything she does save is going to make a difference down the road. As long as she doesn't cash it out again, which is what she'd been doing. Every time she left a job, she cashed it out for something that seemed more important. Don't stop. Whatever the justification you're giving yourself, why you're not saving for retirement, why you're bailing out for a while, it is not worth it, okay? One of the things I hear way too often is, I'm paying 18% on my credit cards. Why would I not pay those off? Why would I put money into a 401k that I don't know what it's going to make, you know, 8% over time if I'm lucky? Why would I do that? And the answer is, well, there's a lot of reasons. One is if you have a match, that's an instant return, free money. Usually it's 50%. You often have a tax break putting that money in. Every dollar you put in your 401k goes all the way in. Every dollar you want to use to pay debt is whittled away by taxes. So you get 75 cents maybe to pay your bills. So that's another reason. But it's mostly that compounding I talked about. Is you got to get the money in your account so it can compound. If it's not there, it's not going to happen. So I'm not saying ignore your debts. I'm saying this is something you have to do as well. And this is something that's very, very important. All right. Good debt, bad debt, neutral debt, toxic debt, I like to call bad debt. All right. There's a, good debt got a bad name because the banks were making loans that didn't make sense. People were borrowing sums of money that were insane for houses they really couldn't afford. And then we have the student loan crisis that I think is building. We've got $1 trillion of student loan debt, which is more than what is on credit cards right now. Okay, that's a big deal. So people have way overdosed on what's supposed to be good debt. Debt in moderation can help you get ahead. When you buy a house, typically over the long run, you're paying down a mortgage and building equity. You know, at some point, housing prices are already starting to come back. Maybe they'll never be what they were. But if you pay down a mortgage, you do build equity. And if you look at the statistics, even now, homeowners have a net worth that's something like 20 times that of renters. So we don't know what the connection is between homeowning and wealth, but it's still there, even after the crisis. Federal student loan debt, and it's important that you see federal, not private student loans. Federal student loan debt, fixed rates, usually tax deductible, tons of repayment options, the possibility of forgiveness. This is probably the most flexible debt in the world, okay? In moderation. If you borrow $150,000 for a BA, it's going to earn you 40, that's a problem, okay? That's not going to work out. The math doesn't work. One of the things I want to point out about payday loans that interests people is that in the early 90s, when I started writing about it, I'd never heard of payday loan plays. I think there were maybe 300 across the country. Now there are more payday loan outfits than there are McDonald's and Burger King combined, okay? This is toxic debt in the extreme. And the way that it works, if you are lucky enough not to know how payday loans work, you go in, you write a check for an amount of money, like 300 bucks, they give you 275 and they hold on to your check. And they cash it when it's payday. Now, a lot of people that go in, and that, by the way, that works out to be almost a 400% interest rate. For that fee over 2 weeks turns into an APR of 390-some percent, okay, for a 2-week loan. It is crazy. But because the fee seems reasonable, in proportion to the money that's given, people think, okay, well, this is a great way to get emergency money. The problem is, if you're mismanaging your money to the point where you need a payday loan, chances are when payday rolls around, you're not going to be able to pay it off. You won't be able to make it good, so you roll it. And that's where people really get into trouble. And I hear from people who are borrowing from one payday lender to pay another. They wind up in bankruptcy court, because there's no way to pay off this debt. And this, again, it's perfectly legal. 40 years ago, there were usury laws. There were interest rate caps. There's no way this business could have run. What did happen, interestingly enough, is the military got ticked off because all these payday loans were just clustered around the bases. So they made a rule that you couldn't charge a service member an interest rate higher than 36%. Now, my 85-year-old father-in-law thinks 35% or 36% is outrageous, but that was enough to clear out the payday lenders. You go to a base today, and I defy you to find a payday lender, because they know they can't make money that way. So it'd be nice if the rest of us had a similar situation. Neutral debt, kind of everything in between. You can overdose on any of these, but if you have a reasonable repayment plan that you can afford, they can be neutral debt. Private student loans, really a problem. And if there's one thing, again, I'm asking you to be teachers, the people around you, try to get the message across to anyone who's considering going to college and their parents that they should avoid private student loans. I used to be kind of mealy-mouthed about that. Well, maybe there's some situation. The problem is private student loans, they're variable rate. which means they're going to go up when inflation comes back, and all these people who are already in pain are going to be in worse pain. They have very few consumer protections. You can't count on forbearance or deferral or income-based repayment plans or hardship, a break on payments for hardship. None of that. The private student lenders typically won't pay ball because private student loans, just like federal student loans, cannot be erased in bankruptcy court. Okay? Federal student loans have taxpayer subsidies. I can kind of see the rationale for not letting people skate. Private student loans are a private business deal. They are based on credit information, credit scores, so they're underwritten like any other loan. And yet, unlike any other private loan, it can't be discharged in bankruptcy. So private student loans, scary, scary. And if somebody is going in with not a lot of information about college and college expenses, just let them know. Stick to private, don't stick to private. Stick to federal student loans because there are limits to what you can borrow. That's a much better way to go. All right, once you've got all your debts listed, what you want to do is show what the interest rate is, write down what your payment is, okay? And then you want to start prioritizing those toxic debts, credit card debt, bounce fees, payday loans, title loans, anything that's that toxic. That should be the first to start working down the line. Refinancing is kind of a hit and miss sort of deal. It used to be easier to get loans to pay off some debt consolidation. Now the debt consolidation field is full of just shysters and just bad people. So be very cautious about a debt consolidation loan. The one place I might go is to a credit union. They typically have personal loans, and the interest rate may be less than what you're paying. It will be a 3-year personal loan, fixed rate, fixed payments, and you can pay off that debt. So if you can get one of those, that might be the key to dealing with manageable credit card debt. Don't be in such a rush to pay off the mortgage if you got one. And I know you'll see those charts that show you how much money you can save, and you can. If you pay a loan off fast, if you pay a mortgage off fast, you'll save some money. Not as much as you used to because rates are so low. But the reality is most people have better things to do with their money than pay off a low-rate tax-deductible debt. You want to be saving on track for retirement. You want to have a fat emergency fund. You want to have all the insurance you need to have. And most families, that's going to be enough. They're not going to be able to pry up any extra money for a mortgage. So don't sign up for a mortgage prepayment until you've got all your ducks in a row. Now, I promised you resources for help. And these are places I can vouch for, folks I can vouch for. When I said earlier that if you had any of those, red flags, the red signals, if a friend had any of the red signals, you can consult a bankruptcy attorney. The National Association for Bankruptcy Attorneys is right here. But you might also want to make an appointment with a legitimate credit counseling agency. Now, credit counseling got a really bad name in the 90s and the turn of the century because a lot of for-profits got into the business disguised as nonprofits. And then finally the IRS came in and cleaned house, shut a bunch of them down. The National Foundation for Credit Counseling is the one that's been around the longest. They've been around since the 50s. Now their deal is they want to sign you up for a payment plan that will get your credit card debt paid off, not any other debt, credit card debt, paid off within 5 years so you can avoid bankruptcy. So that's their gig. They are supported in part by money from lenders. Big surprise, who want their money back. So they may not let you know that bankruptcy would be a better option. So that's why you want to make both appointments. One with the credit counselor and one with the bankruptcy attorney. That way you get the full story and you can find out what's actually going on. For people who really have a problem with debt, now I think this is actually the minority of folks. I think most people can handle a credit card, can learn to pay it off, but there are some people who simply can't. That they have got some quirk, whatever it is, that they can't control their spending, that they can't control their debt. Debtors Anonymous is based on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's free, it's discreet, and if there's an issue that you know about, a friend, family member, yourself, you can find them, you can find meetings and get started and really have a shot at a much better life. Finally, when I first started writing, there was no place to send middle-income people for real financial planning help. What you had was a bunch of commissioned salesmen. okay, that we're selling insurance or selling investments or selling. They're still out there. That's still the majority of the people who call themselves financial planners are actually commissioned salespeople. If you want someone who is paid only by fees from you and not commissions for selling a product, you need a fee-only planner, not a fee-based planner. Fee-based, except both, fees and commissions. Fee-only planners. Now there is a group called the Garrett Planning Network that represents fee-only planners who charge by the hour. So you don't have to go in and spend $2,500 on a complete financial plan. You can do it in chunks. You know, you can deal with some of your issues as you have the money to do it. And if you don't have one nearby, a lot of them will work over the internet, by phone, to get you started. And I really think most people can handle a lot of their finances on their own. I still would recommend a tax pro. If you are buying insurance, you need somebody who's well-versed in that. Go to a lawyer to get a will, really. But when you're ready for retirement, you're making a bunch of decisions that you won't be able to reverse and that have an incredible impact on your future quality of life. So I really urge, even if you've been doing it yourself the whole time, go find yourself a fee-only planner, sit down with them and review your choices so that you have some confidence, you've got a second opinion that you're doing the right thing. As I said, there's so many decisions you're having to make about how you take your retirement, what bucket you take first, all kinds of things that need to be discussed with somebody who's knowledgeable, who can help you out. So this is the group that I would turn to. For most people, that's the way to go, the fee-only hourly model. Okay, so we went through what we've been through. We reviewed how there was an explosion in credit. And that doesn't mean it's not your fault that you have credit card debt. You participated. Doesn't mean that it's not your fault that you took out a loan you shouldn't have. Okay, you participated. It just says there was more going on than just you being stupid or uninformed or whatever you want to call it. So acknowledging that there are greater forces at work, okay. Then we accept where we are. We've made mistakes. It's time to move on. Then we can come together with a plan that can help us get some sanity about money. And that's what I really want for people.